Hello and welcome to The Big Picture. This is the season for political analysts and commentators to talk of a possible expansion and reshuffle of the Union Council of Ministers. In fact, a reshuffle and an expansion has been talked about periodically for over a year now. Last year, around early April, there were many reports about possible changes in the ministry. However, after a few days of speculations, the issue died down and the 64-member Narendra Modi ministry ever since last March has remained unchanged. With budget session of the parliament scheduled to begin next month, the speculations are rife again about a possible expansion and a reshuffle. Today we will discuss whether an expansion and reshuffle is necessary, and if so, how it is expected to be done and where and what kind of gaps need to be filled. And also, crucially, the options the Prime Minister has when he actually sits down to undertake the task. To discuss this, I have a panel of very experienced journalists, political commentators and analysts. Ashok, Tandon, senior journalist, who was also the media advisor to former Prime Minister Atal Bihari Vajpayee. Neerja, Choudhary, a veteran journalist and columnist. Monu, Nalapat, also a senior journalist and political analyst. And Vinod, Sharma, political editor, Hindustan Times. Welcome to all of you. Ashok, Tandon, this is something you have been in that office, you know how things happen. You think, this is just one of those seasons where such speculations happen and then it fades away, or you think that there's actually a need for cabinet reshuffle and expansion now?
See, normally between the two parliament sessions, there is always speculation about a cabinet expansion and reshuffle. So there's nothing new when a section of the media is speculating about it. But a bit surprising is that an international wire service putting out a speculative story on cabinet expansion. I worked with the news agencies, so I know normally the news agencies won't speculate, but a global news agency is very authoritatively had put out a story today about a possible reshuffle. And also surprising is that a channel which is not private channel to say so, is also having a debate on this. Normally, speculation about the cabinet expansion reshuffle is the domain of the print media. But anyway, having said that, so the thing is, it's the Prime Minister prerogative. And if I may narrate one interesting anecdote, one of the media interactions Prime Minister had about a few months ago, one journalist asked him about the possible likely cabinet expansion, and he said, when it takes place, you won't come to know about it. And he said, even my cabinet colleagues may also not know about it.
Very important cabinet colleagues.
Yeah. So, therefore, I think, nothing stops us from discussing a possible expansion or
no, it's not
reshuffle.
It's not a question of possible, whether there is a need for it now.
No, the question is, it is, as I said, is the prerogative of the Prime Minister. As and when he feels that there is need to fill the gaps or reshuffle the portfolio.
As an analyst, as a commentator, as somebody who has been watching, these things for a long time.
Yeah, no, I will tell you, there are gaps. For instance, the induction of a Shiv Sena into the cabinet is long overdue. In fact, it has been subject matter of speculation. And then after the Bihari election, since there are few states going to the poll, it's a very obvious calculation that the poll-bound states may get a few more berths. But my personal view is that a few changes here and there, induction at the middle level, I don't think that could be called a major reshuffle unless there is need for a change at the top level, say for instance the top 6 ministers. If that is not going to take place, then the changes or inductions may be only marginal to fill certain and there may be gaps. There may be vacancies also.
Vinod, do you also look at it the way Ashok Tandon looks, or and the important question of whether you think that then there is need for some kind of a reshuffle and an expansion?
Well, I've known Ashokji since I used to work for the UNI, so I too have my roots in a wire service. Wire services do speculate when the speculator is authoritative. You see, when you get to know from somebody who may be privy to the thinking. And both
of you have indulged in such speculation working for wire agencies.
Well, at least, sure. I mean, I was at that time too junior. Ashokji was doing political reportage more than I did. at that time. But surely speculation is possible in a wire service report. But my personal view, Girish, is that, the need is not for a cabinet reshuffle. The need is for ensuring implementation of policy on the ground. The need is for devolution of power, adequately empowering ministers to take decisions, getting more people on board to ideate, to make the Council of Ministers a genuinely collectively responsible Council of Ministers, which is taking decisions after due consultations amongst themselves. And that decision making is not just the product of one particular node in the architecture of the government. So I think that, and moreover, you see, it is a fact that some ministers are underperforming. But if the reshuffle happens in the manner in which Ashok ji has suggested, then it is not a reshuffle geared towards good governance. It's a reshuffle geared towards winning an election, which makes things all the more worse. Because if you are going to get people representing certain states and provinces or certain political parties, you may end up having a human resource which is a liability rather than an asset.
Absolutely.
So I think this is not the time for a reshuffle. This is the time for the government to pull up its socks and to make sure that whatever it is, and also if there is scope for changes, it should be in the parliamentary team of this Council of Ministers, so that they are able to forge a consensus across political parties on key legislations, which are the main issue that is blocking, according to the government, its reforms agenda.
Right. Neerja, how do you look at this? Do you think that this is just another speculation which will die down, or you think that there is some substance to it and there is a need for it?
Speculation has arisen again. It died down because of this meeting on the 27th, where the Prime Minister is calling the 4th Council of Ministers meeting, and one was held less than 2 months ago. So, and some people are saying it's going to be a farewell party for some ministers. So that is why the speculation. Now the talk has been going on. As far as the, if the there are 2 or 3 reasons why the Prime Minister may use the instrumentality of a cabinet reshuffle to do what he wants to. One, of course, is what Ashok ji says, the political reasons. There was over-representation of Bihar. Now Bihar elections are over. There are other states, particularly UP and other states going to the polls. Therefore, will he bring in more people from these states and drop some from Bihar? Those are the political reasons. Then there are reasons of governance. Now, Mr. Modi was seen as a development icon, a man who's going to perform, and given the high expectations in 2014, he was seen in that light. And a lot of people had voted for him. From the hardcore base of 18%, it had gone to 31%. So this group wanted something more than the hardcore Hindutva. Now, 2015, that agenda was completely derailed by extreme elements in the party, hotheads, and there's a perception of a Modi not being able to perform on his development governance agenda. Therefore, does he want to bring the whole discourse back on track and focus on this agenda and bring in people who might be able to help him do that? I agree with Vinod when he says Mr. Modi has given a lot of programs and struck high themes, but he doesn't have, again, the vehicles to translate that into...
Vehicles? When you say vehicles, what, people?
Instrumentalities to translate that into action. And I agree with him. The ministers have not played, and I think have not been allowed to play the role that they normally do in a parliamentary system like ours.
Why do you say, why do you say they have not been allowed?
Because the powers are concentrated. Every prime minister, we've had different prime ministers, and the concentration of power has varied depending on their personality. But Mr. Modi's prime minister's office is a very powerful one, and from all accounts, it's a lot of power
centralized.
It's centralized system. It's much more a presidential form of governance, even in a parliamentary setup.
Okay, that's interesting. Mr. Nalapat, how do you look at this? Do you think that is a problem there? one another thing is, whenever we talk of a cabinet expansion, reshuffle, last year also there was this proposal, or every time the performers versus non-performers, weed out the non-performer. Is it practical at all?
Well, Girish, I'd like to say that I certainly hope that any expansion that takes place will not be on the lines that, Ashok ji was talking about and with Vinod and Neerja talking about. You saw the cabinet that came into office on 26th of May 2014. It was very much, in my view, a political cabinet. You had a large number of people from Bihar, you had a lot of people from UP. I mean, you had very little representation from the South, for example. And I think a lot of that was focused on the need to bring in individuals who could go to their respective states. We have seen how the BJP has been sending minister after minister in election campaigns. Now, my experience as a common man is that people don't like ministers. So the more ministers you send, the more votes you're going to lose rather than gain. But the BJP doesn't seem to get it. It keeps sending ministers to elections. So I certainly hope this time around, the Prime Minister is going to choose people on the basis of competence and integrity. He's not going to bother what caste or community they come from. I mean, I'm reminded of a book written by a Congress leader which just came out, in which it said that somebody from a very obscure subcaste retired or was pushed out. And Indira Gandhi had to spend a lot of time trying to locate somebody else from that obscure subcaste. I just want to add one more point. The so-called presidential system. I mean, the President of the United States functions very effectively. Sometimes the presidential model works very well. And in India, provided there's a good policies and there's a clear focus and there are good officials running policies in the ministries and the PMO, then centralization of power need not be a bad thing.
Ashok ji? No, about this performance, in your own experience of being in that, seeing things from very close quarters in that office, you think that this performers or non-performers can ever happen in the way in which it is said it should happen?
See, one point which I would like to comment on what Neerja said was, see, what is happening now is that we are looking at Narendra Modi's government and the cabinet in the backdrop of the 2 terms of the UPA,
right,
where we had a weak Prime Minister. So therefore, we sometime, and a commentator like Neerja also comments that it's a very strong Prime Minister's office. Now, all the Prime Minister's office, but for Manmohan Singh, has been very strong. I know I have worked with Vajpayee's Prime Minister's office. Now, in our parliamentary democratic system, the Prime Minister is the pillar of the cabinet arc. He is the key person. So, do we expect a weak Prime Minister or a weak PMO? I don't think so. So, therefore, no, let me complete. So, having said that, look, as I said, performing and non-performing minister is a continuous evaluation by the Prime Minister. And that is, I said, it is a prerogative.
How effectively does that evaluation take place? That is the question. I'm sure this is a question which, ordinary people would like to know also.
See, the thing is, tell me which minister among the top 6, I would say for certain, is not having powers. They are performing, they are doing well, and they have all the powers given by the Prime Minister. Now, Prime Minister has set up a team of 6 senior ministers with whom he interacts practically on every other day. So, I want to dismiss the comment made by Neerja that Modi is running the government like a presidential system. I don't think so. That's not the case. I mean, the same allegation was made against Nehru and Indira Gandhi as well. But
no, but how is it connected to this whole concept, issue of, either if there's going to be an expansion or not, or a reshuffle or not?
No, as I said, the Prime Minister, invariably, I would say all the Prime Ministers, they keep a watch on their minister's performance. And when the time is right, they do the reshuffle also. I think the cabinet expansion and reshuffle is part and parcel of the democratic system.
Right.
Now,
absolutely.
Since there has been no cabinet expansion, as I said earlier also, there are certain compelling reasons like induction of Shiv Sena, and also there are states which are underrepresented like Rajasthan and maybe others also. So I don't think that...
Would you agree that post Bihar, for instance, what has happened in Bihar, and before that, do all those factors matter?
See, after all, who runs the government? The politicians, the political parties. So they have to evaluate political factors. So if there is a speculation in the media about having offloading some minister from Bihar and having more from you. There is nothing wrong in it.
There's nothing wrong.
This is what the politics is all about.
Okay. Yes, Neerja. I'll come to you, Vinod.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. That's what politics is all about. You cannot ignore it. And, bring in a very meritorious person from Andaman Islands or, that kind of thing. You've got to balance it. No, my point is the Prime Minister aroused huge expectations.
About that, I don't think anybody has any quarrel on
And
that.
he gave programs which gave people the hope that, the drift, the stagnation we'd seen would end. Whether it was toilets, whether it's Swachh Bharat, Make in India, etc., etc. Now, for those kind of goals to be achieved, and the perception is very important here, to be created that you're actually making progress, you need your team fully there. So if
And you
your
don't
team-
think they're there?
No, I think the team looks to the PMO for instructions to come or direction to be given, guidelines to come. Even though the Prime Minister set up this group of secretaries to suggest innovative measures to take, I think somewhere there is a contradiction here.
No,
Mr.
but
Modi
Neerja-
wanting to move forward very rapidly, wanting innovation, and yet, the PMO being very, very powerful and the ministers not being able to, at least this is the feedback one gets.
So
Ashok.
maybe
Okay.
your perception.
Well,
but I
that's
don't
okay.
think
It is
it-
my
No, let
perception. I
us.
don't
Neerja,
know. It is my
you
perception. By
both
talking to
don't get into
people-
Maybe
a
your
discussion there.
personal
Ashok, yes,
But
yes.
I
it's
just
based
want
on
to-
talks with people.
Okay.
I just
No,
want
it's
to
okay.
point out, point out to Neerja and to frankly, all this overloading of Bihar ministers, I don't think it helped the BJP very much in Bihar. Quite frankly, I don't believe that this packing a cabinet with people who are quote unquote politically useful has ever helped any party in any government.
And it still continues. Yes, Vinod.
See, my short take is very simple.
No, one second, Vinod. You can respond to whatever you're saying, and additionally, the another thing which is spoken about, written about, analyzed, any number of times in this last 1.5 years is the talent crunch which the Prime Minister faces whenever he has to,
You
go
see,
in for-
unfortunately, the Council of Ministers was originally created through a process of elimination and not a process of selection. And that is why the Prime Minister set a age bar of 75 years.
It has not been followed.
But it has not been followed. It has been followed. Maybe Najma is nearing it, and she may find
Crossed
the door
it.
in the next reshuffle. But that apart, what I am saying is that I would slightly interpret it differently than my friend Neerja. The Prime Minister, the charge against him is not of being presidential. The charge against him is of being viceregal. You see, understand. You see, Prime Minister in a cabinet form of governance in parliamentary system is the first amongst the equal. And because he is first amongst the equal, he may not be responsible all that is wrong with the government, but he is accountable for all that is wrong with the government.
Right.
That is a very clear definition of a parliamentary system of governance. Now, what's happening today, Girish, regardless of the ministers speaking out of turn, at one level we talk that these ministers are in virtual awe of the Prime Minister. At another level, these ministers are speaking out of turn, and the Prime Minister's time and again told them to guard their language. That has caused, what? Leave governance aside. The government is in conflict in parliament, politically, outside parliament, and socially. On social, political, and parliamentary front, this government is in conflict with the people it should be actually taking the help from to run the government, to run the system. Because in a parliamentary form of governance, government alone can't run the system. It has to be run through political parties represented in parliament. And that is where the main problem is.
So are you trying to suggest that all these is resulting in say the Prime Minister being handicapped not to expand or reshuffle?
You see, no, I'm not saying that. The Prime Minister has a prerogative, and if he makes up his mind, he will do it. What I am saying is that a cabinet reshuffle, a change of faces will not help without a change of approach. This is the point I'm making.
Okay, that's an interesting point. Mr. Ashok Tandon, would you agree with that?
No, see, this could be Vinod's personal view.
No, but generally, do you agree that when a cabinet expansion takes place, let us just go through your own experience in the past years. Whenever an expansion or reshuffle takes place, what is the purpose behind it?
So as I said, it is a continuous process. See, when you induct your ministers, you have to give them a chance to perform.
Right.
Now,
1.5 years is enough chance to perform?
Of course. So
Right.
I'm not contesting that it's not time for Modi to reshuffle his cabinet. The question is that he is constantly assessing the performance of his minister. So therefore, as and when he feels that there is a time for him to reshuffle the pack or induct new faces or drop some faces, he will certainly do it. And this has been a normal practice all through. So it's not very unusual for the media to speculate also. But
No, I'm not talking of that. I'm on a larger issue. The larger issue is when governments, when prime ministers need to expand or reshuffle the cabinet, what is in their mind? What is it that
So many
is
factors.
primarily in their mind?
No, so many factors. Of course, I won't agree with my friend. See, they belong, it's a political party which is in power. So it has to assess the political factors as well. So there's nothing wrong in assessing the political factors. Also performance, of course. Performance.
Mr. Nalapat's another point was...
I know.
another point.
His point is that the minister should not be sent in campaign.
No, one second
Well,
thing
he may
is he
have his
says
view.
that on merit, on the performance and the merit of the people, have a cabinet or a ministry. Don't go in for this, caste factor and all these factors which work. Is it a practical thing at all?
See, as I said earlier, it is not possible to overlook such factors. So we are a huge country. We have a diverse country. You can't say that I don't have any talent from Northeast, therefore I won't induct any minister from Northeast. No. So these factors are there. And therefore the Prime Minister is the captain of the team. And it is his job to assess the performance of the minister. Look for talent. Hunt for talent within the party also. So therefore, if at all there is any move to expand the cabinet or reshuffle the cabinet, I'm sure the Prime Minister will be having reports about each and every minister. And depending upon their performance and the political need also.
And the political need. That's a crucial thing. Yes, Mr.
See, Girish, I have not heard of any voter who looks at the cabinet list and then goes to the voting booth and casts his vote. I haven't yet heard of that kind of a voter. Today, the people of this country are very different from the people of the country, during the time when Ashokji and I were young people. They're much more empowered by the internet. They're much more active. They're much more alert, and they're much more demanding. So the point is, in decades in the past, society, sociology, and all that was very important. Today, it's performance that counts. What is going to count to the voter in 2019 is: has Prime Minister Modi delivered on fighting corruption? Has he delivered on high growth, on jobs? Has he delivered on these issues?
So you think that when people think of this, they don't. You are saying that they don't consider whether representation has been given to different sections of society, the diversity of this country has been addressed. You don't think that is a factor at all?
I would like to say, quite frankly, that policy should be equal in every group, every community, and you should basically respect diversity by treating people equally, and the government should do that. But for that, to say that you must have only a particular person or a particular group is the only individual who can treat that group fairly, other people cannot treat that group fairly, that is entering into a very dangerous system of quota raj.
Okay.
No,
Neerja.
I would say that it is performance plus. Hypothetically speaking, today, suppose the Modi government did not have a single Dalit minister. What would be the impact after what's happened in Hyderabad? What would be the message they would do?
The press conference addressed by the HRD minister,
had two
who was
Dalits,
exactly
flanked by two Dalits.
Right.
So the diversity of India is and to balance that is a very important consideration for any prime minister in a
Girish,
country like
I don't
ours.
believe that these two ministers made any impact on public opinion. The arguments used, frankly, were, in my view, very counterproductive. And if we had 2 ministers or 20 ministers sitting there, it would not have made a difference. I don't think the public would have accepted these arguments.
Yes, Vinod.
You see, the Vajpayee government was a different government at all, very different from the current government. But even there, Ashok ji will remember that they would make Shahnawaz Hussain sit bang behind the Prime Minister. To show,
During the Parliament debates.
yeah, to show that there was one directly elected member of Parliament who happened to be a minority member of Parliament in the BJP. Now, these things, these identities do matter at the grass level. We saw it in Bihar happening. Like, say for instance, there are certain communities which get a sense of belonging if they have a face from their own community representing them in the cabinet. And
It does make a difference. You think it does make a difference?
But at the same time, that alone is not the recipe as of today. As of today, there is a huge gap between performance and promise. And this tendency of the BJP, which I often say, that they gain an inch and show a mile, it is counterproductive. You see, and that is where what Mr. Monu Nalapat is saying comes into play. You are dealing with an electorate that is empowered through dissemination of information, regardless of whether it's coming from the government or not. But there is so much of debate and foment happening around him that he knows what is right and what is wrong, and what wrong is being committed by the governments. So I think that the sole purpose of a change in the Council of Ministers should be to tone up governance,
Yes.
regardless of what instrumentalities, what identities, what provinces are represented.
Okay.
Yes, of course, the Prime Minister has to take forward his promise of cooperative federalism, and that is where a broader representation will have to be there from the provinces, because you can't run. I mean, BJP has this image of being a party confined to certain portions of India and not finding representation elsewhere.
Okay.
So that has to be beaten.
Okay.
But the key is governance, and the key is delivery.
Okay.
More than governance,
Mr. Tandon, would you agree with that? So that means, from what everybody is saying is that here is an opportunity for the Prime Minister to think differently from the past and act differently from the past. You think that is possible?
See, first of all, I'm sorry, Nalapat, there's hardly any taker among the panel with your view. All of us agree, but for you...
No, Vinod agrees with him.
No, Vinod also feels that the political factors are very important. And therefore, the politicians have to be ministers. You can't have all the experts, non-politicians in the cabinet. This has never happened. So you have to pick up talent from within. People have been elected directly by the people. So therefore, the thing is... see, most of us agree on one thing, that finally it is the Prime Minister who has to make the call.
Right.
He has to choose it. But there seems to be some contradiction here. While some people feel that Modi is authoritarian, he is not allowing any minister to work. At the same time, some of us are saying that he should have more talent, he should induct talent. So there are ministers now. Top 6 ministers, there is hardly any question mark. They are functioning. So are they not functioning?
Who has a secretary of his own choice?
No.
I mean, the appointments committee of the cabinet
Come
system
on,
has
Vinod,
been
right
consigned
now,
to the dustbin.
All the top 6 ministers, they enjoy full freedom, they are doing well, and therefore there is no question mark about they are not being allowed to function.
Okay. I think on that note, we need to end, because this is something, whether it's going to happen or not is a separate issue, but whether it should happen and how it should happen is something which we have discussed. And it's interesting what Mr. Nalapat's view is also. I'm sure many youngsters will agree with what he is saying, but as my other panelists feel that there has to be, the political aspect of it has to be taken into account. Let us wait and watch how the Prime Minister will approach this issue whenever he does it, since it is his prerogative. Thanks to all my guests. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue in the big picture same time on Monday. Meanwhile, have a great weekend.